Hey guys, welcome back. Happy New Year. I know with all the stuff that came out about Tears of the Kingdom, there were some pretty glaring omissions to the plot, characters who vanished without even a whisper, and all types of new lore that undermined the stated past of Breath of the Wild. Today, I am focusing on an overlooked detail most people only brought up in passing, because it turns out there could be a very sensible lore explanation for what seems completely superficial. I'm talking about Link's maxed out hearts and stamina containers at the start of Tears of the Kingdom. Kick back and relax while I walk you through my theory. I swear, it's a lot deeper than it seems. Part 1. Game Inconsistencies. I think at this point, it's safe to say that everyone agrees Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild have some major story problems between the two games. It mostly comes down to a lack of connective tissue. Too many things are unexplained, too many things don't add up. Just a few journals and some critical thinking from the developers would have gone a long ways to fixing that. We can see this on full display at the start of the game, because during the intro of the game, we can see that Link has a total of 30 hearts and 3 full stamina wheels. Any veteran of Breath of the Wild knows that this is simply not possible in that game. As aesthetically unpleasing as it is, you will either be missing some hearts, some stamina wheel, or the most horrendous of all, some of both. Basically, everyone in the community hated this. It feels incomplete. I always thought it was done this way so you would have space for temporary hearts, but considering that bonus stamina wheels extend beyond the wheel itself, that doesn't really make any sense. They could have appended extra hearts past 30 just like they append extra stamina. Ultimately though, you will be missing 2 units at the end of the game, which I'm just going to call containers for the sake of simplicity. Now, we all know that Tears of the Kingdom started off as Breath of the Wild DLC, and so it is possible that 2 more containers or 8 more Spirit Orbs were planned in those DLC chapters. Because they cut it out and started Tears of the Kingdom, it would make enough sense for them to go missing. And yet, when they produced Tears of the Kingdom, they chose to show Link with his hearts and stamina at max. So, how do we reconcile this inconsistency? Did Link fight a couple of bosses in between games to give him the remaining heart containers? Could it be that there are more Spirit Orbs to collect? Or maybe, similar to how we see the Bargainer give Link a heart container in Tears of the Kingdom, other special entities may be able to give him just that. Of course, if such a thing happened, it would have been nice for the game to tell us about this, right? With no information on it, and the game now complete with no future content planned, that means it is up to us to theorize, and I'm happy to tell you I have a solution. To get there though, we have to talk about Spirit Orbs in general. Part 2. Spirit Orbs. In Breath of the Wild, there are a total of 136 shrines. 120 were in the base game, 16 were added as DLC, and of those, only 4 gave out Spirit Orbs as a reward. The others contain Divine Beast Orbs related to each of the champions. We should discuss what these orbs actually are though. The Spirit Orbs are held by the Sheikah monks who created the shrines as a trial, and are a blessing from Goddess Hylia. Some of her powers to be passed on to the hero when the time is right. When the orb is bestowed upon Link, we can see how it enters his body, specifically his chest. Later, he can exchange these orbs with Goddess Hylia at Goddess statues for heart containers and stamina vessels. This indicates that the orbs themselves do not contain life force in them, but something else that Hylia is taking and then bestowing life force upon Link as in trade. I believe that what these orbs really are fragments of time power, fragments from Goddess Hylia herself, and that they are able to reside within Link because he is a Hylian. And that is because Hylians have the power of time in them, as we see with Princess Zelda in Tears of the Kingdom. Likewise, we see time powers in Sonia, as well as in Link with the use of Flurry Rush and Bullet Time. The game also implies that Hylian soldiers have these abilities too, as their equipment actively gives a bonus to the use of Flurry Rush. If this is true, we need to ask why these monks have the orbs and what the orbs are doing for them. First and foremost, the orbs seem to be keeping them alive. They are all over 10,000 years old, mummified, and yet they continue to exist. When they give up their orb, they break apart into particles, seemingly moving on. If this is the case, then only when they give up the orb do they pass on to the afterlife. In the past, I have floated the idea that the Sheikah shrines themselves are performing a similar function to Raru's shrines of light, except as to where his shrines purify and imprison evil, and thus suppress the monster population. The Sheikah shrines may simply be pausing it, slowing it until the time is right. I will investigate that idea more later. For now, let's simply accept that the orbs contain time power from Hylia, and are responsible for the monk's continued existence. The Divine Beast orbs need to be brought up because they are different. They are also given out by monks, but each one is given out for a different race of people. It is my belief that the orbs function very similar to the spirit ones, that they are likely from Hylia but imbued with elemental power specific to those champions. I believe that they were meant to enhance the elemental power of the pilots. This isn't like the secret stones though, which amplify a user's power, but rather a raw addition of power to their already existing supply. So far, this all makes sense. Hylia entrusted 136 orbs to the Sheikah, 124 with time power to reside in the hero who would exchange them for containers, 12 with elemental power specific to the other races, specifically so they would be able to control the Divine Beast. Given that Link is missing 2 containers at the end, that would be 8 extra orbs to be gained between games. But where did they come from? It's simple. If the monks are being kept alive by orbs, then there are simply more monks out there who have spirit orbs. Better yet, we already see these 8 monks in Breath of the Wild. Let's move on to the Trial of the Sword. Before we get to that, are you enjoying the video? If you are, a like and subscribe help out a lot around here. YouTube has been rough lately, and I need all the support I can get. So please, if you like my content, spread it around and consider supporting me directly. Now, back to the video. Part 3. Trial of the Sword. One of Breath of the Wild's DLC introduces a Trial of the Sword. This all happens when Link puts the Master Sword back in the pedestal, at which point the Deku Tree explains to him that he can undergo the trial to try to unlock more of the sword's power. He can go through 3 sets of trials, each one enhancing the sword's attack by 10 points. When Link undergoes the trial after placing the sword in the pedestal, he will disappear just like we see when he uses the teleport function of the Sheikah Slate. He then appears in a place reminiscent of shrines, but without his gear, and has to fend for himself. Eventually, as he makes his way through these trials, he will appear in a grand central area similar in appearance to that of the Astral Observatory. There are 3 sections in this area, 3 islands that Link makes his way through as he passes more and more of the trials. As he gains access to the final chamber, in it we see 7 mummified Sheikah monks. They will explain that they created the trial for the hero to enhance the power of the sword. After instructing him to pull the sword, they disappear similar to what we see with the other monks. It's important to note that they do not give Link spirit orbs when they do this. Link pulls the sword, bringing it to its awakened form, which means it has 60 attack, glows blue constantly, and, of course, still has durability. If we go off the logic that the mummified Sheikah monks have spirit orbs, and that is how they continue to persist, then it would follow that these 7 monks have orbs as well, but are simply not giving them to Link, at least not at this time. This would account for 7 of the 8 missing orbs, so where is the last one? Why, it is with the final monk, Master Monk Maz Koshia. Part 4. Maz Koshia. Under the Shrine of Resurrection is a dungeon, basically a giant Sheikah shrine. The monk in charge of that one is Maz Koshia, and he will guide Link through the Champions of the Ballad DLC quest. It mostly boils down to doing some shrines on the Great Plateau while using a life-draining super weapon called the One-Hit Obliterator. Anyhow, once those shrines are done, the quest expands to the Divine Beast Orbs, and the trials that the champions undertook 100 years earlier. That's not really important. What is important is that once those are done, Maz Koshia will ask Link to come below the Shrine of Resurrection for a final test. After going through basically another divine beast, Link will make his way to the final chamber and come face to face with Koshia. Like the other monks, he too is mummified, but to Link's surprise, his body animates. Maz Koshia rises to challenge Link to combat, wanting to test the hero's skill. Once defeated, he will give Link the Master Cycle, his own divine beast. Sadly, it doesn't shoot awesome lasers. Afterwards, Maz Koshia doesn't hand over a spirit orb. But unlike the other monks, he doesn't disappear. He will remain in his little stasis chamber thing, and even offer a rematch to Link. As you can see, with Maz Koshia and the 7 monks from Trial of the Sword, that leaves 8 total monks in play, and by my logic, they each would have a spirit orb. Link is missing exactly 2 containers, a rather interesting coincidence, isn't it? If these 8 monks have orbs, and those orbs are how Link got his remaining containers we see at the start of Tears of the Kingdom, we now have to ask what happened. Here we go. Part 5. How Link got them. With the defeat of the Calamity and the saving of the kingdom, it would seem that the shrines, the divine beast, and the Master Sword had all served their purpose. I think a couple of things happened after Breath of the Wild. While initially Link stayed with Zelda following the game, he would lead to deal with problems only he could solve. I'm talking about taking out wandering guardians and other malice-infected things. Once that and the monster threats were under control, to the point where the citizens could keep things restrained via the monster control crew, Link knew that it was time to return the Master Sword to the Korok Forest. I believe this is when those monks reached out to him. In their eyes, their purpose was fulfilled. They lived in eternity for this victory, and now that it had finally arrived, they no longer wished to continue on. It was time to give up the thing that bound them to this earthly plane, and so they gave up their spirit orbs to Link so they could move on. Pause. I know what you're thinking. At the end of Trial of the Sword, they fade away like all the other monks. This is true, however, this doesn't necessarily mean that they are dying or moving on. I think they just disappeared into, let's call it, the Sheikah Technology Network. Longtime fans of my channel know that I think the Sheikah shrines are simulations. If we look at their size, they physically wouldn't fit in Hyrule, even more so now given what we see in the depths. So while they did disappear in the same manner, it wasn't fading from existence or moving on to the afterlife. It was simply leaving the scene so Link could draw the sword. This time though, with Link returning the sword for what should be an eternal rest, there was no longer a reason to remain. So when Link returned the sword, they passed on their spirit orbs and faded from existence. Now for the last one, held by Master Monk Maz Koshia. His title says it all. He is the master of the monks, the head of this order. With him being the last Sheikah monk, and their function served, I think he too was ready to move on. He had one final task though, to safeguard the kingdom. I believe that he activated something in the Astral Observatory to send out a wide signal throughout the land. This made the Sheikah technology disappear or shift into other states. The walls of the Astral Observatory in the library shifted to stone, for example. It doesn't completely make sense as some of the shrine's replacements in Tears of the Kingdom conflict with the idea that they were ever there at all. Even the Cave of Resurrection forgets about the gaping hole under it that once housed a huge dungeon. And of course, there is still some Sheikah tech around that didn't disappear. I'll save the nitty-gritty of that for my Sheikah tech video coming out probably sooner than later. Just know that why it disappeared, I think, is ultimately due to Maz Koshia taking action. I believe that he called Link to him when he did the deed, and then bequeathed his spirit orb to the hero. With that final orb, Link merely had to go to a statue and exchange it with Hylia as he had done with all the others. And that, my friends, is how I think Link got his extra hearts at the start of Tears of the Kingdom. What did you think of the theory? Do you think the 8 unresolved monks in Breath of the Wild could have spirit orbs that account for Link's 2 added heart containers in Tears of the Kingdom? I'm curious about your thoughts and will respond to any comments I get on the topic. If you haven't done so already, a like and subscribe would really help out. Sharing the video with your friends helps out as well. And given that it is the dreaded month of January here on YouTube, I need all the support I can get. For those of you who want to help the channel out directly, consider becoming a channel member or joining my Patreon. Without the help of these fine people down here, I wouldn't be able to keep making the content I do. Thank you everyone who is providing for me. You are the ones that allow me to keep doing the things I love. If you do join up, you will gain access to my growing Discord, where we can talk more directly about upcoming topics. I can get pretty chatty at night, and I love bouncing my ideas off people, or just answering whatever questions you might have about the Zelda series as a whole. That's all I got for you today. Be safe, and may the way of the hero lead to the Triforce.